In Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, we read Jesus giving what's known as the Olivet Discourse. And at this key juncture in the sermon, which has to do with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and his coming again, he says, "No one knows the day or the hour," that is, the day or the hour of his return, "neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son," that is, S-O-N, himself, "except the Father alone." Now, that sounds as if the Son of God is denying his own omniscience, and it's something that we might expect a number of scribes to have problems with. What's interesting is that we do have a textual variant there, which is "nor the Son" is dropped from the majority of manuscripts. Most of them are late, but there are several early manuscripts that also drop "nor the Son." So neither the angels in heaven nor the Son. Now it's just "not even the angels of heaven" is how we translate that phrase, except the Father alone. So without "nor the Son," the verse reads, "No one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels of heaven, except the Father alone." And consequently, there have been some who've said this is the clearest place in the New Testament manuscripts where we see that scribes, proto-Orthodox scribes, have tampered with the text and changed it so that it conforms to their view of orthodoxy. There are really a couple of problems with that, however, and what the problems are, first of all, is in Mark's Gospel we have the parallel Olivet Discourse in Mark chapter 13. And in verse 32, it explicitly, clearly, and unambiguously says, "nor the Son" there. The earliest manuscript we have that drops that wording is from the 10th century. And as far as we know, there's only one Greek manuscript that does not have "nor the Son" at Mark 13:32, while the majority of manuscripts at Matthew 24:36 drop it. Now, the problem we've got with this is these very same scribes who are working on Matthew 24:36, when they get done writing out Matthew's gospel, now are copying Mark's gospel in their typically 4 gospel codex is what they're writing. And so when they get to Mark 13:32, do all of them have a case of amnesia? And they say, we had "nor the Son" here, we dropped it, we took that out, but we forgot that we did that, and we're not going to take it out here. In other words, Mark's gospel very clearly says that the Son of God did not know the day or hour of his return. Matthew's gospel, if these scribes took those words out, would say that Jesus does not explicitly deny his own omniscience here. But even there, that's not the only problem. The other thing is, in Matthew's gospel, you have one word added that you don't get in Mark, and that's the word "alone" with the Father, so that it says implicitly what Mark says. If we drop the words "nor the Son" in Matthew 24:36, as the majority of manuscripts, and again some early manuscripts do, then it reads, "No one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels of heaven, except the Father alone." But in Mark's gospel, you've got "no one knows the day and the hour, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, except the Father." It does not add the word "alone." So Matthew implicitly refers to the exclusive knowledge of the Father in a way that Mark explicitly does that. And consequently, even if you drop those words in Matthew, it really doesn't absolve the problem of the Son of God's omniscience. We might expect the church fathers, if they had problems with this, to want to change the text and eradicate "oudehachios," the Greek of "nor the Son," or, in other words, not have those words in their manuscripts. But what we discover is that Irenaeus in the 2nd century actually talks about "nor the Son," and he says this is an illustration of the humility that Christians should have as well, following their Lord. Origen talks about it. He doesn't seem to recognize that there's a textual variant here. It's not until we get to the 4th century with St. Basil where he says, "I don't think that that's the way we should treat this text," but he deals with it in a different way rather than trying to change the text. In other words, we go through father after father after father, and what we discover is they either reinterpret the passage or they just discuss it the way it is and say this is not a problem for them. but they don't seem to be motivated to say, let's drop those words. And we don't get that kind of an attitude until very late in the transmission of the text in church history. Consequently, it's hard to say we have scribes who drop the words here because that seemed to be offensive to them in terms of the omniscience of Jesus, when you've got the words clearly in Mark that the same scribes would have written out, and you don't have the church fathers early on seeing this as a particular problem. So the question is raised, what does this mean then if Jesus' omniscience is denied here? And that's an area for theologians to wrestle with, but what's interesting is you do have other places that very clearly show that Jesus was not omniscient while he's on earth among people. The early church argued that you have the Son of God as 100% divine, 100% human, and yet they also recognize that in his human conscious state, that he would not know all things. He got occasionally surprised. Obviously, if you get surprised, that means that you're unaware of something until suddenly you're aware of it. In John chapter 5, we read that the man who Jesus later healed, the paralytic, had been there for 38 years in his sickness. And then the next verse says, when Jesus knew that he had been there a long time. It doesn't say that Jesus knew he had been there for 38 years, just that he observed that he had been there for a long time. So there's lots of implications here and there that Jesus is not treated as omniscient in the Gospels already. So the question then is raised, who would change the text of Matthew? And my argument is that I don't think later scribes did it. I think that the evangelist Matthew himself changed the text and dropped the words, nor the Son, making the lack of omniscience on the part of Jesus implicit because he adds the word only with the Father, while as Mark doesn't have that. Matthew used Mark as his template for writing his gospel, and he tweaked the wording just a little bit so that now you have an implicit denial of Jesus' omniscience here, while as in Mark you have an explicit denial of his omniscience. What's interesting is, and this is where Origen comes back into the picture again, he says that although Jesus recognizes that he's not omniscient here, when it comes to Acts chapter 1 and the disciples say, tell us, Lord, is this the time that you're going to restore the kingdom to Israel? And he does not say, I don't know when that time is going to be. What he says is, it's not for you to know. He doesn't say it's not for us to know, but the time of the restoration of the kingdom of Israel is going to be done at God's or the Father's own appointed time. He doesn't deny his own omniscience here, and Origen pointed out that post-resurrection, Jesus now understands these things because he's in his glorified body and his omniscience fully works on a conscious level.